we've been talking about it, like when we were having coffee and we go for a run. So we went for talking to now broader, coming online with podcasts. We went for almost a 5K run this morning, right? And I haven't been doing, as I said, this new year, I think apart from the 4.5K run that we just did, I've done a 2-kilometer run. And so after these runs, we're going to have a chat. We're going to have a coffee. And we'll just do like a amble of whatever came through, right? And some of the times you've been talking and in my mind, I'm like, okay, stop, Tofe. I want to ask you this over a podcast and have a conversation. But I had this particular one in my mind and it comes to parenthood, right? So in your own words, so just give people a bit of an idea. We both have young kids, right? I've got a 8-month-old. You've got a 17-month-old at the moment. Now, looking back at it as someone who, is a runner, did a lot of fitness things.
Yeah.
How would you say life has really changed now for you as a dad versus what it was 2017, 2016 when you were doing really large running events and the like? What has been like the major change for you?
I would say besides the distances, I would say I feel like I'm more family orientated. So my life was back then, I would say between 2016 to 2018, I was the sole focused and it was really pushing myself on the bigger events. For now, I would say my life is more family orientated and the running, I can enhance it with that. So I go for a run and that is determined by like, all right, this is what I've got planned for today. And so we obviously planned today that we'll go for a run. I'll catch up with you. We'll go for a run. We'll get coffee. We'll hang out afterwards. Our babies are hanging out together.
Yep.
It makes me really happy. I will allow time for that. But right now, me running, I'm doing maybe anywhere between 10 to, it will eventually get to like 30K. And I'll get home and then my day's planned out with family. So beforehand, I'm training for an event. I would do an event. Sometimes it would be a 2-day event on my feet and then I'll rest and then get on with my life. Now I've got a kid in the mix and I'm restricted by choice. So I would say that's the difference. I also find different that I'm doing this more for my family. Like there is a level of, eventually I'll have my son running with me and any other kids I have. So there is that level of, Dad does this, I'm inspired by this, hopefully, and I want to do this with him. So there is a level of, hopefully my family can join me on this adventure as opposed to it was just me solo and anyone else I met along the journey that I do these events with. But now it's like I want to integrate, and I think that's the word, integration. I'm trying to have everything coinciding with each other so there's a proper congruence.
How do you, me personally, right? They came into a space of being a dad where I train in the mornings. I predominantly, not so much of running, although I will do some running.
Yeah.
We did so today, where I'll train over a gym. And I got to go out in the morning to go do that. And I try to do it so it's not impacting my family time directly, really early in the morning. Yeah. But still, there is some part of it where, if I had to be honest, I'd go, it feels slightly selfish that I'm going away. My partner's looking after the baby.
Yeah.
Should I be doing this? And in my heart to go, yes, but I'm a better person. I'm a better human for doing this and to be back home. Do you have a similar mentality, or have you had to have that conversation with your partner, or even before, a baby, to be like, no, I need this for
all of the above
mentally. Yeah. Okay.
All of the above, because I felt guilty that I'm taking time out when I felt like maybe I should. And I feel like should is like this very strong word that leads to maybe expectation.
I ought to?
Yeah, I ought to. Like, shouldn't I, like the story, shouldn't I be there looking after my baby with my partner? But what you said before of I'm doing, like, if I look after my body and my health, then I can look after you guys. And like my top value in life is health. That goes before my family, everything else. Like, that might sound selfish, and it needs to be, because if I can't look after my health, then I can't look after you guys. It always falls under that. Like, health is the big one for me. So what do I need to do? I don't run as much as I used to. I'll probably get maybe 2 runs in tops during the week, but a lot of strength training, just moving in general. What can I do so that when I come back, Oki's like, what's he been doing? and then he might get curious, and then eventually we'll work out together. But if I can do that, then I can karaoke. Like, that's my big intrinsic value these days. Before, it's like, oh, can I run this long distance? Now it's like, I want to be able to lift so I can karaoke and so I can chase him. That's my big one. And that actually stems from childhood, because I actually don't remember dad running around with me. Like, he was very sedentary, still is. So I want to change that. Like, that stops there. And now I want to be able to chase him and carry him. And it's nothing against my dad. It was just what he worked with at the time. Yeah.
You mentioned guilt. There was a part of what I wanted to ask you about this, which was, so you've got a book. It was a book. That was the original conversation that we had many years ago. Right, actually, it was around the book that you actually created, and you talked about then of your running journey, the sort of the mental struggles that actually came with a large amount of running, and kind of deep diving into that as almost trying to take yourself out of the issues that you had at the time mentally or dealing with through. I know that afterwards you got back into running and everything go through. Do you still mentally, if you recall back to then, what it is today, when you're now doing a little bit of running, you just said you're getting into 2 times a week, but is there part of you that, whether it's either guilt or, the expectation of the past that, hey, I don't want to go down that path once again, does it ever enter that in your mind of, oh, I feel guilty that I'm doing this again, as opposed to not doing it again, or, feel guilty that you want to pursue doing a marathon for those selfish reasons? Does that enter into the mind at all?
It does, probably not to that extent. I don't think I would ever take it to the level I was doing, like literally cross countries. So I don't think I'll go to that level, but there is like that selfish goal of, I want to run a marathon so my family's there at the end. There is like that goal, maybe an Ironman, stuff like maybe something as big as that, but never to that level. There is a bit of trauma around that because it wasn't all or nothing. And the story I tell myself, if I do that, then I'm going to lose everyone. That is essentially a story I'm telling myself because I've only got so much time. If I put everything into training and everything into all these events and all that, there may be a level of resent, like from Bernie.
Yep.
And maybe Oki when he's older, when he can comprehend what's going on.
Yeah.
Dad just always does this and doesn't have time for me. So I really have to. The big thing with parenthood now is I've only got these chips, and it's like I have a choice of where I want to put the chips towards. Because if everything goes into here and there's nothing for them, then they may create some separation that could lead into bigger things. So yes, there is a level of fear that if I pursue this too hard, there's nothing wrong with pursuing passions. I think it comes down to the conversation and communicating that with my partner. Like, how much do I really want to push this? For me, it's just like, I've dealt with injury. I've been injured for the last few years. That for me, getting into it, that's a goal to run a marathon post injury after like really pushing hard. After that, I can just wean it back and go back to where I'm at now. So that's where I'm at mentally, and it is a fear that is just at the back of my mind. But I guess I've got control over that fear. Going, look, it's nothing irrational there. I don't have to sign up to the biggest and best event because I don't need to, because I've done them all.
Now that's an interesting one. So feel free to go either check out your book if they want to do that. You can probably listen to the previous podcast. We talked about a few of those ones, which is like the ultra marathon over Mount Everest, and we've talked about that, over a coffee. Through Mount Everest base camp. Now, but maybe another word, regret. You've done a lot of those things, and I'm just trying to put myself in this position as well. Do you have a feeling, or how do you manage the potential regret that might come with not pursuing more of maybe those endurance races or other things that you might go, we're talking about it right now. Hey, in 10 years time, yes, I was really glad that, I actually made more time for the family and I was doing this. I don't think anyone's going to disassociate with that or say, no, that's wrong.
Yeah.
But there might be a real possibility they go, man, I really regret that I didn't actually get back on the horse and do those really large things again, because now maybe you're hungering for it. Maybe you don't have the physical ability. How do you personally deal with making sure that you don't have as much of that regret level? Or how do you do so in a family setting, like as a family unit, to make sure that it's communicated?
Yeah. I think the regret is probably at a smaller level now. Like, for me, I know I'm enough if I don't do all these big events. It comes down to that core. If I felt like I was yearning something, right now I'm not yearning anything. It's like the only yearning I have is to do this race and have them at the end, because I'll be doing it for myself now. Obviously having them there's some level, it's not validation, it's more like, because a family is such a high value for me, like have them there, and to do it as a dad, that's an accomplishment in itself, like obviously raising a child as well, and the other aspects of life. That's like as much as I want. I think the regret will come from when I picked up running 6 months ago, when a friend of mine said, hey, do you want to go for a run? And I said, if I said no, that may have led to regret, because I'm like, oh, I could have pushed myself and we would have only gone for a few K, as opposed to, do you want to do this massive event in, I don't know, hypothetically Antarctica? I don't know. No, I don't need to. Maybe financially, whatever the reason is, but I'm like, it's what's at risk here. And it's like, do I go there to do it, or would I rather be there with the pivotal times with my family? So it's like that, what's at risk.
What makes it so easy for you to make that call though? Is it because of previous experience that you went, oh no, I know what it was like to not have that family
like,
unit, I want to do that?
Yeah, what's the inverse? And it's like all the training required. There's a lot of time that's needed. And time is, I'm sure you probably can relate to this, and I would love to hear your take on it. The perspective is, as soon as becoming a dad, the story I tell myself is, man, I wasted so much time. What did I use with all my time? Was I just procrastinating? Look, I procrastinate a little bit here and there. But it's like, it comes back to that chip mentality. I've only got so many chips I can put my time towards. And I think knowing myself, with like, what are my core values around like curiosity and adventure and family and health, like those 4 core things, it needs to go to there, but how can I integrate them all into one? And I was talking about before on our run today, like Bernie and I, we do usually a reflection piece at the end of the year. And then we talk about like, what are our goals for the year? And family is a category in itself that family is a category in itself. Like, oh, what are the family goals that we want to have? So it was, all right, how can we tie that with health? So for me, it's like, let's go for 4 hikes together. And it doesn't matter how far or how long or we go for, as long as we do it together and it's about the adventure. And something that coincides with that is, we don't have like, well, for me, and I think Bernie's adopted this too, like, we don't have New Year's resolutions, but we have a word for the year. So
okay, I've heard this from, I actually saw this recently from, it was I forget his name, from Stoic Philosophy,
Marcus Aurelius, maybe?
No, it was Ryan Holiday. Holiday does the exact same thing with his family.
I didn't know that. And I think I feel like a few people do it, but in my first year I did it. I think thriving was a word, abundance. Learning was my word for last year. I think it's the 4th year I've done it now. This year it's adventure, and
I love that.
And it's like this umbrella characteristic that I want to embody in under everything. So everything I do this year is adventure. And what does that look like? Well, it really depends on, like, if I can get down to the nitty gritty and get to details if I really want to, which I probably will, so I can measure it. I know you're big on that and quantifying. So this year it's like, I want to go on a hike, and like, as long as I'm keeping healthy and keeping active, like that is the stuff I would probably regret on. When you're talking about regret, like, it's not so much I'm doing the big events. Why didn't we go out? It was a really good day today, whether it's raining or not, whatever good it is, because it's subjective, but we could have just gone for a hike or something like that. So I'll be more regretful on those decisions. And I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of fear that I have the opportunity to bring an active lifestyle for Oki and any other little ones that we have and partner. So it's like, how can we do that together? And I think that's where like a lot of excitement in life comes about too. And like, how do we do that before work, or how do we do that even after work, or like, how do we do that? And adventure doesn't even have to be, let's go for a hike. It could be, let's just build a pillow fort. Like we did that the other day when it was like that heat wave, and we just grabbed all the cushions and made a little pillow fort. And yeah, it was like so cool. And I was like, we're already doing this whole adventure thing.
Yeah. Well, like, to be honest, one of my most cherished moments when I was young with my sister was building forts and getting together in the big boxes. And to be honest, that was the adventure feeling. I want to come back to goals, because I've got lots of questions in terms of some of the structuring. And yes, you're right, dude. The way that I put down my notes, I don't know if I've ever shown you. I think I have my daily notes and my little summaries, and we've talked about this with our little one. So we'll talk into that in a moment. But I want to go back to before you miss it, and maybe for people who, haven't heard of previously from yourself or seen anything around you. So you may be understating it, dude. You used to run, you used to do what would mere mortals would consider pretty crazy feats of endurance. We're talking about Cameron Haynes previously in terms of running, and he's a, big runner, bow hunter. But, maybe, you weren't doing the Moab 240, but man, you could have gotten to doing Moab 240 or something equivalent. You were doing some really large ones through Scotland, I believe it was.
Yeah.
So it was large runs that you were doing, right? Huge. More than the mere mortal here and there will consider. So you were doing huge things. I would have said, hey, Tofe is a really ambitious person. I'm using this word, ambitious. You're a really ambitious person. We had a conversation on the podcast about ambition, and me and Karen actually went back and forth on the definition and what it meant and how it actually came through in a person. Where now, right now, today, would you say you are as ambitious a person as you were then? Is it declined? Is it that you've met some things? Or has the ambition shifted to another thing? Because in a personal perspective, prior to having little baby girl, I would have said, hey, I was pretty ambitious, but my ambition still exerts itself fully in the front of my mind that sometimes I go, oh, in wild ways. I'll be like, hey, I'm still doing this training. Could I compete at a really high level? Just I can feel it. In the back of my mind, it's telling me, go for it. You should do it. You should train harder. You should go for it. And then the more rational, logical part of me goes, yes, but that means I'm exchanging time with my family, the energy of being there. So, but I can tell you that my ambition hasn't turned off. It is hammering away in the back. How would it come across for you? Because if I looked at it from an externality perspective, I would say, oh, it looks like the ambition for that aspect of life has declined. It has been replaced for the ambition of being in a family unit. Is that true, or how would you describe that?
I'm going through a dichotomy just thinking about my answer. And I think I haven't voiced this before because this is going to be the first time articulating this. It's actually two-pronged with ambition. I feel like I've actually reeled it in, and there's actually fear there, to maybe fear of success, I would say, because I knew I actually went all in, and I felt like I lost friendships along the way. So I don't want that to happen again. And that was my own ego getting in the way. So I'll just own my own stuff here. But more so, I don't want to lose what I've got right now. And I don't want it to, it's a fear of am I going to mess this up? So it's almost I've reeled it into what's ample. So there is that. But I also think it's we spoke about reprioritization the other day. I'm not putting as much, I'm putting more effort into family life as opposed to career. I used to try and, quotations, take on the world with work. Now I've reeled that in, and it's my family, hanging around my kid and my partner feels more of where I want to put my time. So I feel like I'm cutting myself short in other areas, but I think right now this is where I need to be. And I'm hoping it comes back to that everything happens for a reason, so that I can, it all unravel itself later on, where not unravel in a bad way, it will balance itself out later on, where maybe Oki's a little bit older, and then I can, I don't know, I might put more energy back into the work thing. But right now I'm dealing with, and we were talking about this before, it's this paradox where I'm I feel like I need to be, maybe it's expectation and what societal thinks, the older I get, I need to work my way up the ladder. I'm no, it's actually the opposite. Simon Sinek talks about this, where maybe people don't want to do this. Maybe they just want to do the bare minimum. They want to have a decent job where it's all about lifestyle, because right now that's not important. And it comes down to this quote, and it's the only people that will remember that you worked overtime is your kids. And it's oh, and it really depends on, and even that's subjective, because if you truly love your work and you love it and it doesn't make you feel burnt out, and even you can do it anytime, I think that's a different story. And if your kids can get involved, that's great. But if it's something where I'm just working a job that maybe I don't like, and I'm just in the office at, say, 10 o'clock at night just to finish a project,
then it's different.
That's a different conversation. But I would say that's where I'm at, and it's something I'm actually constantly wrestling with. And I think the acceptance there is it's okay for where I'm at right now, and it's okay if I reeled myself back in, because what's more important is me showing up. I'm getting up at 5 o'clock to go to the gym, getting my 45 minutes in to come back, and I've got a sweat on so that I can function during the day, and I can karaoke, and that's the more important thing, and just be there for my partner. And there was, and going back before, there is the guilt because like my partner wasn't getting back into exercise much later than we had anticipated. That is there going to be resent because I'm working out and she isn't, and about having that conversation. I'm sure there was a little bit there. Now it's having it so that, okay, life is a little bit different with a baby. How can I will take turns and I'll have to train in the evenings and getting stuff like that, or you do this and I'll watch Oki. So I think it's a shared balance.
And I think as people listening as well, look, obviously we're talking very much as with dads, and we're talking about specifically, baby in our lives and the realization and the changes around that. But look, exchange here mere mortalites for anything else that comes into life that might be like a baby. It could be, you have a project. It could be something else that you're personally having to look after. It just shifts and changes the way that you might want to very specifically take your day, right? But I think that's just a conversation of ambition it can be so interesting. I think it's I also don't often talk about it with people. I don't know whether that's like something that everyone's got sorted out or not, because I'm telling you, I still have that problem where yesterday, I was pretty unwell yesterday. I trained early in the morning. I had some time constraints about what I was doing, and we had some stuff to do in the morning. I got 2/3 of the workout that I wanted to do. And dude, I'm telling you right now, the back end of my ambition, I was like, can I make my way to go and do the last bit of the training that I didn't do in the afternoon? Yeah. Can I find a way? And I didn't. There was other things I chose to do. And I'm telling you about it right now because part of me went, I didn't do that. I should have done it. I was ambitious. I want to do it. That's going to help me progress. But is it in the exchange of what? What are you then taking away to go and do that?
Yeah. I was going to ask you, if you're feeling under the weather, or maybe not so much under the weather, and then you don't do the thing that you said you're going to do, do you go through self-sabotage? And if you do, what does that look like?
I wouldn't say self-sabotage in the direct sense of, I didn't do it today, so I'm not going to do it tomorrow, or I'm going to get angry at others. Yeah. Maybe the frustration will come out because I didn't go and do the things that I wanted. I wouldn't call it self-sabotage. I will double down on myself in the coming up events. So for me,
so you make up for it.
Exactly. I'll try and make it up and double it down where it's, okay, I didn't do the thing yesterday. Cool. Tomorrow, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go even more because I'm just going to make sure that I make up for the things that I missed. And look, rationally thinking about it, is there a need for that? No, not anymore. Not really. And you're talking about the priority is something else, but it's the idea of how I'm ambitious in wanting to do this. But fully realizing, I'm saying this right now, I fully realize I'm not going to be world-class at anything in the fitness domain. I just won't. I'm not, again, the level of energy, the level of commitment, what you need to give up, I'm not prepared to do that. Yeah. But part of me goes, hey, I'm ambitious. That would be fun to do. So it's a very different thing. And you were talking about like the work-life balance, if you will. We're doing a podcast right now. We're doing it on a weekend. If eventually this becomes my full-time job, it will never feel like a job. It doesn't feel ever like effort. I've moved the way that I do editing and other things. More quality. It's fun. Dude, I look forward to doing it. Hopefully, eventually, my little girl joins me in either having conversations. We had this conversation with my partner. We were saying, when she's old enough, 8, 9, I don't know what that is. I want to get on and have a conversation like this. Whether we share it or not, I'm not sure. But what if we just had a conversation about ambition? And let's talk about it. Let's just say, what does that mean to you? What do you feel like that? Is it something you think about now? It isn't. I can explain my point of view. And it almost, when you're on a podcast, you're having a conversation with a microphone, it feels like you have to be a little more rational. Like you have to really think it through as opposed to just emotionally going off cuff. But, I hope to find a blend of the two, right? And so if I was to get to that point with something like this, and I don't know how others might do that in their own personal ways. I was going to ask you that question. Have you thought through in the future with Oakley, with, another future baby, is the ideas ruminating in your mind of this is how I'm going to try to potentially keep the contact, the connection, the talking about topics. Have you guys discussed that at all or thought about it?
Yeah, for sure. It's one thing, it's like, how do we bring psych safety to as a parent-child relationship?
Psych safety?
Yeah, psychological
safety. Explain that a little bit.
Yeah. The ability to feel safe around speaking about what's on the mind and not feel like, it's a big topic around the workplace. Like, do I trust my boss and my team enough where if I bring up an idea, I'm not going to get vilified for it, right?
Did you have that in your family growing up?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, and I think it's a common thing. Like, I feel like it's changed a lot now. I feel like I've done work on myself that I can talk to mum and dad about certain things that maybe aren't as pleasant as like the joys, right?
Yep.
Like what I'm struggling with and stuff like that, and not feel like I'm being judged for it.
But did you have it when you were a child,
Yeah,
like when you were young? Okay.
I'd say because I didn't know how to articulate myself, and I didn't know, so I didn't probably have the emotional intelligence compared to like where I'm at now
Sure.
to doing work. I'd love to have that with Oki because that's a big thing for us. It's like share what's on our mind, communicating that, but also I think we spoke about this on a run, like normalizing failure, and there's like a lot of like I think Sarah Blakely, she's she started Spanx, and she said that like dad was really big on like normalizing failure, and I was really inspired by that. Like something that Bernie and I we did it a lot more pre-Oki, and we'll eventually bring it back in, but when he can comprehend a little bit more, because he's 17 months old, so he understands words here and there, and he understands what we're doing, but for sentence structure, and it's a little bit different. But like, what was our win for the day? What did we fail? Oh, what was the thing that we consider a failure, and like what could we improve with it too? And just like at least voicing that to the point where if he did this and he felt like he messed up, that's okay. And then we can like, how can we learn from that? And so that picking ourselves back up. And I think for me, it's like, it's me being okay with that too, and modeling that behavior. So that's something I want to eventually bring back in. I like the idea, what you said was Vienna, with like having a conversation, having a podcast conversation. It could be around any topic.
Yep.
Let's make it, I don't know, tell me about play, like what play means to you. And it's probably getting lost into like a little world and imagination. And for me, I'm like even that in itself, it's like, oh, my inner child playing with you, with my actual child. So
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, well, and look, two parts. One, when I was growing up, and I know my mom and dad listened to this conversation, so basically listen to everything. We didn't really have that like the ability to psychologically speak about probably any of the bad things, even the good things. We didn't. I didn't have that growing up. Yeah. I don't know if it was just born in Colombia. That's not sort of the thing that we talk about. I never remember as a kid I never remember like talking about, hey, this is good, this is bad, this is happening. Dude, I wouldn't even tell them when I had a girlfriend. I wouldn't ever tell them when like, something happened. It was just like, cool, whatever, keep going, right? It's probably taken to this day to be better. I'm telling you right now though, we still don't. They probably know me better through the podcast and what I talk about in a more open way this way than I do directly talking to them. And that's something that, just takes time. It's culturally, I think, different. But so that's one aspect of it in terms of, that front. And with friends, I'm just able to be more open. I'm able to have that conversation. But with the podcast, and this is where I'm trying to probably find out from other people, because I guess I haven't had too much of this experience. My partner has this better with her family around, open conversations. It's when you have to be the dad or the parent, right? And that's a very different thing to being the friend, the person who has a conversation. I guess I'm trying to accomplish that potentially through the podcast or in another format. And I'd be interested to see if you've thought about this. There's a time and place to be the parent. You have to discipline. They want to push against the boundaries of find out what's correct, what isn't, and the rules. But there's another aspect of being their friend, being the person they care. Where do you sit on that boundary of being the friend to the parent, to the protector, to the rule enforcer? Have you thought about how you might separate and treat it in a different way in different situations? Honestly, I'm still in our kids are still young. I'm still sitting in the process of how is that going to look like and finding out from others what they try and test to see what's going to work best. But have you thought something to that effect?
Yeah, you actually bring back a core memory. And I think this is what I'll do for me. Like the moment I got into a deeper level with my parents is when they got to that level of being a friend. And I remember I was going through, and I probably voiced it in the last podcast episode we did, 2014, I was going through a really, really hard time. And it was like mum went onto my level and she was just there for me. And I was like, I felt like connection was there and I felt like I could trust her. And same for dad as well. And dad's, I guess parenting styles are different. Like maybe mum's a little bit more direct, maybe dad's a little bit more indirect. But I think when Oak's having a hard time, and that's when I can get on his level and just listen with empathy and just be a space holder. That's like a big thing for me. Can
you give me an example of not doing it and then what you mean by that? Because I think sometimes, you can throw the words out like being in space and the empathy. What would you envision that to look like? What's the inverse, what it doesn't look like, and then what it actually looks like?
Yeah. All right. So if he was going through something, and this is hypothetical because I don't know what his world will look like, telling him what to do in a certain time as opposed to tell me how you're feeling, and I'll just be there. Like I'm listening. Do you need to, what is the emotion that you're going through right now? And how do we need to process right if you're ready? So being there for him to process that. He could be going through fear. He could be going through shame. He could be going through guilt. It's usually in the ones that are negative emotions, as much as I don't like putting labels on emotions, they're just emotions at the end of the day, because we're going through a human experience, and helping him regulate through that and just being there as support. Because I find, there's a famous basketballer who said, like, jobs of parents is to be facilitators, not to be drill sergeants at the end of the day. It's okay to teach them about the rules, and I think that's important because we're not going to run onto traffic through cars.
Yep.
But still need to understand like the consequences of things and the repercussions. But teaching him, hey, it's your choice, but I would love it if your choice is to come to me if you're going through something, and I'm not going to be one that is going to vilify you or come through with anger. I'm going to come from a voice of reasoning, and someone that is going to zip my mouth when you speak, just so you can feel heard. And I think that's a big one for me. Maybe growing up, I didn't feeling times where I needed to, I didn't feel heard, seen, or understood. And this is the big thing with being as a parent, even as a partner too. Because if I am going through my own tantrum as an adult, that's my inner child coming out. That's 4 or 5-year-old Tofe that was going through a hard time back there, that is going out and it's expressing. He's driving the bus when I need to be driving the bus as an adult. So when I see that, it's the constant reminder that he really needs me right now as support. He needs to feel held, maybe not physically or emotionally. It could be emotionally. That's when the friend comes in. That's when I see, because that's from my own anecdotal experience. That's what I feel with that time with mum in particular. I remember I just gotten to the doctors about my depression at the time and going on temporary meds. And mum's like, what's going on? I didn't actually tell her what was going on at the time, but I could tell she got into my level, and I could just sense the compassion and the empathy. And I was like, okay, I feel like I tell you about everything, right? So I think, that's...
And let's talk on, so I was going to bring up on an earlier point, but I think this was even better. Another word, shame. Yeah. Right. I think the times have changed. Like 2024 when we're doing this right now.
Yeah.
Different world in 2014, different world in 2007. There was a time and place I can still remember where, and look, different culture / times have changed. You wouldn't talk about this with people because, and I think the key is shame. You don't want to tell people you're depressed, you're down, you actually can't operate because the way you mentally, for males in general, let's just say, people are like, well, no, you have to be the tough one. You have to just tough it out. I think a lot of conversations have shifted and changed, and there's an ability to have these more open conversations, even when it comes to your partner, your kids, your colleagues. And I thrive now more so when I'm having, especially even with colleagues, being really honest and open and not finding the shame like, hey, actually, I'm going to be terrible today, guys, because I didn't sleep very well. I'm telling you right now, I'm kind of frustrated. If you see me, pull me up, feel free to do so. I think a younger me might have been shamed to do that. So you've got to be you're the team lead. You're the person operating this. No, there's no finding yourself in that. Do you find yourself devout of shame now around that? Do you still find that there's a little bit of shame that you don't want to expose still some of the darker thoughts that are still in your mind, even through family, with a partner? Or have you been able to really move past that stage completely?
Oh, much better. I can move past it. And I think to bring a definition to shame, like as humans, we have all these emotions. There's so many, but bringing it down to the 4 core emotions of like happy, joy, sadness, anger, and fear. If I'm feeling frustrated, am I feeling frustrated in anger? Am I feeling frustrated in sadness? What it is. But around that quadrant sits guilt and shame. So guilt is something I feel I've done something to someone, and shame is how I feel about myself, right? So shame can usually be derived by fear too. So I think for me, it's understanding where's that shame coming from. Another big one is acknowledging the shame. That's been a big one. It's almost like a release, like I'm actually feeling shame right now. And it's like shame is like this, it's like almost like this exponential feeling. It's so heavy. It's like a tsunami. It's great when I understand I'm not alone, hearing from someone else that's going through. It's like, oh, it's not just me. That's been a big one. But when I feel it, I think I've picked myself up on it, because if I don't pick myself up on it quick enough, it's almost like this compounding effect.
Yep.
And that's the worst, because I feel like I'm carrying all this weight and my shoulders feel heavy when I'm not actually carrying anything. At work, I think that's an important one, where it's important for the leaders or a manager of a team needs to be okay with, hey, bring an open heart, and I will too, and I'm not going to attack you if you feel like that.
Yep.
I think it's a little bit easier as a parent, because they're like, especially if they're a parent, like, I hear you, I see you, I know it's like having the late nights and all that. I think it's gotten easier for me. Do you still experience it now? I know you touched on it before, but as Vienna's like 8 months old now, do you still go through that, even shame at work?
I think it still sits from probably just the way that I was raised and culturally and a few others. It always is there. The barrier is there that says, oh, I don't want to share this. No, don't talk about that. I wanted them to see me in a different light. Yeah. There's shame in it. I think it's to say it's always there. It's just like step past that boundary and go, cool, but it doesn't matter. Share it anyways, because it's going to be a better thing to talk about it and go ahead and do that.
Do you go through a level of, sometimes I don't want to share because it's like I want to be respectful of TMI, like too much information, and I want to give boundary. Like there is a level of trust. Like I don't trust that person. I can say I'm not feeling too good, but I don't want to say why.
Yeah,
like,
that's a good point. Yep.
And it's, who do I have the relationship with that I like the men's work I go to, I feel like I can share everything, because like it's a container and it's designed for people to share. But maybe I don't want to load. I used to do the whole trauma dumping onto people, because I'm like, I'm in that space where I want to share now, and they're not in that. They're not ready, right? It's like, so it's like this fine art of like teeter-tottering on this knife edge of, I can, for myself, like I feel like I can be vulnerable if I allow, and there's a container for it to do so. And maybe the most I'll say is like, I'm not feeling too good, and that's the justification. But if I have the relationship with the person where I feel like we can open up like that, maybe I'll give them a little bit more detail, especially if they're inquisitive around it. I think that's the big one for me, the learning curve. Because if I open up to it, then like, man, they really didn't need to open up about X, Y, Z detail, because maybe they're not in the right space to it, despite if they're the manager or whatever. That's what I don't know. Can you relate to that?
No, I can for sure. And I think it's, part of me does blend it quite a lot more than I think probably should be blended. And I think some of that goes to the mentality of, I like to, the work-life balance, you know, where people say, hey, you should have a work-life balance. A lot of that gets really melded in my own mind, aka it's just it all feels like, hey, I'm just exerting energy everywhere. And so some parts of that go, well, cool, I'm going to share some personal stuff when it comes into the workplace, depending on the things that I'm doing and working, and vice versa, that might come into conversations that I'm having with my partner around work and sharing some of those things. So I can see that, but you're right. It's a fine art of where does that overburden of sharing actually then become detrimental, and actually not be a feasible, not needed part of the workplace or the conversations you're having.
Yeah, it actually happened. Previous roommate I had, I felt like she felt safe for me to talk to stuff about, but every time that was our conversation, and I think it put strain on our roommate relationship, because it was almost like I was coming in as a therapist, and I was only there to listen, and it was almost like the venting turned into complaining all the time, and having to put a boundary in place going, if it's getting to that point, I think it might be time to see someone without being rude about, hey, you need to go see someone. It's like, actually, and I think it takes a lot of like courage to actually have that conversation. Yeah. Just because it's like, I'm not designed for that at the end of the day. I'm not like even a trained, I'll be an ear, but I can't always be it for like every specific moment, because I need space for myself at the end of the day. So humans are interesting people. They're so dynamic too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, I had this similar mentality where, have you heard of the dark triad characteristic, which is psychopathy, narcissism, and psychopathy? I'm pretty sure it is. And it's a piece of, hey, if you've got these three traits,
like any of the three or all three?
Or if you have all three, any of the three, there's some issues, but if you have all three, it is the general traits that when you then combine it with power, you can have some really bad things happening, aka bad dictatorships, etc.
It's like tyranny.
Yeah. So all three of those, you're going to have a bad time. And I remember actually, I was having a conversation with someone and I went, I can see some of these traits coming through of this individual across all three. And I actually had to pause myself. So I could open up and have this conversation with them about these things. Then I also pulled myself back and be like, you're also, not trained. Two, you might actually be misreading some of these things, maybe by your own biases, maybe by whatever else. And I went, I can't as much as maybe I want to sort of talk about these things with them, and because I'm open enough with this person that I could have, I'm also not adequate probably to be talking about these things as well, and putting it out to the world. That's some dangerous territory, because what if that then puts a person in a bad place? What if that makes them intrinsically look at something when maybe I'm just looking at it a different way? So I can see what you mean around. There's also a level of, you got to be realistic of what it means for you. I want to pick up a point. I don't forget it before I go back to goals. Actually, environments. Right now, I don't necessarily go down the path of identifying someone now as something. I wouldn't identify myself as much more than a mere mortal, a dad, whatever. There's a lot of varieties. But I guess for yourself, from a training perspective, you run. You do a lot of running. You do train in other modalities, and that's fine. So just one aspect of that. You're a dad, right? A parent. You're also still in the workplace. You partake in that too. From an environment perspective, and I'm talking you setting up an environment to live. You're in my home at the moment. We went upstairs. We're talking about green bathing and the ability to feel relaxed. If I could say, what's the one thing or setup that you would want to have that you would say, hey, tick the box, this is successful I want to set up this environment at home or in a space that you feel trusted for communications, for relaxation, for whatever it may be. What does that look like for you? What does the environment that you'd want to create look like if you either had to explain it, define it, describe it, whichever way?
Such a great question. It's such a great question because it's almost like manifesting or envisioning what my life would like to be like. I haven't done this for myself. So this is like almost going to be a cathartic process in the making. I can envision like being in nature. What does that look like? Living in a mountainous place or being near a forest, because I feel like that's where I feel really comfortable. And that's just, I don't know. I just envision that. Like, I think of like Queenstown. I think of a place where there's a space for learning. That's why I feel like we're on par with the values here. Like you have a little library just around the corner. If Vienna can like pick a book, you can just go in there and pick a book. A lot of room for play, whether that's a yard or whatever that looks like. So we're moving. A space for stretching. I would never thought I'd ever say that. Like Bernie and I, we've been doing this for many months. Before we go to bed, we stretch. I used to be anti-stretching because why would people stretch? I don't know. It's like I feel more mobility. So that could actually just be the bedroom, really. A place for like an ice bath. It could just be the corner of a room. I feel like that needs to be in my life, for recovery and like the benefits of like cold exposure. That's a big one. I would say that
if you dreamed it big, like no holds barred, there is no limitations, what's the one thing in your environment that you go, I would want to have that?
I would say being near the mountains.
Okay.
I would say that's the big one. And it doesn't have to be a big house. I don't know. I feel like I love climbing mountains. I don't know. It's something about it. Like, I don't know. I just see a mountain and I'm like, oh, that looks so awesome. Like, I'd love to do that. I've climbed a few mountains myself, and it's just, I don't know, being one with the mountains.
It's an interesting point, and I'll tell you why I also asked that question. It's because I've also, in odd ways, been having a similar conversation about workplaces, things to do in the future. And look, I'll call it out right now. I don't think I've talked about it too much on the podcast or other places, where sometime, maybe in the future, 5 years, 7 years from now, I would love, from an environment perspective, I would love to have a warehouse sort of style space, big space, warehouse, where I could set up the podcast space. Okay, I'll have we're in a room at the moment. Maybe I could have a really dedicated in a warehouse space, full setup. There's been some really cinematic stuff that I've seen around podcasts. I'd love to have something like that set up. But not just that, it would also be a space for working out, about. So for a big space for working out, that also includes saunas, ice bath, all that sort of stuff, right?
All that good stuff.
And really doing it in a way that it's not not in a profitable way. Okay, I'm not going to be like, I'm going to make this, so I make that money.
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle thing that, and I haven't teased this out, whether it's a genuinely personal thing, commercial thing, or a bit of a both. Being like, hey, all my friends and people that have been there throughout my life, come and partake in this space. Go for your life. Enjoy it. It's like what we want to build. And I go, why? Because the environment, it's health, it's a space, it's communication, those sort of things. So I don't see, when you say about the mountain and stuff like that, I go, for me, if I had to say the most important thing, it would be health, fitness, and conversation, right?
Yeah. And yeah, it comes down to like, why would I pick mountains? And it's like, all right, there's the adventure. That's like a top value of mine. It's like how active I will be. So my health will be affected positively through that. Bring family, let's go for a hike, let's climb this big beast.
Yeah.
And it's like the lessons I learned from like being in the struggle of climbing that as well. So like personal development as well. But you touched on something important there as well. I think that community aspect, like we are social creatures according to Daniel Kahneman. Oh, is it Daniel? No, Daniel.
Yes. Daniel Kahneman.
Yeah. Where we are social creatures, and I think having that space and having the people in your life that are friends, family, whatever they are, acquaintances, where you like, I want them to be in my life because we maybe not think similarly. I think it's important to have opposing thoughts to create some sort of, because if everyone thinks the same, then it's just how we're growing, right?
Yep.
But to be in a place where it's like, hey, we're going to do this thing and this thing and this thing, but we all enjoy being around each other's company. I think that's so awesome. Like that's so important. Like I think of like, for example, you moved from Colombia, you didn't know anyone, and starting again from scratch. That could also be exciting because you're at a relatively young age, but even floated the idea of like living overseas for a couple of years. That would be a struggle because we wouldn't know anyone. So it's like putting ourselves back out there to make friends. But when we find those people, it's like when we can share those things, it ends up being such a beautiful harmony. It's like, I don't want to ever lose this. And so
no, absolutely.
The community thing is important as well.
Well, I was going to ask you, community side of things, and running specifically or training. Do you prefer to do training or in the fitness space like in a solitude way, or would you prefer in a group setting?
Oh, both, I'd say.
Okay.
Sometimes I as the introvert me just wants my own space, and I know I could just do it. If it's like a run like today, it definitely is like my friend and I, we ran half marathon for training the other day, and I was saying to him, I was like, man, I don't know if I would be able to do this pace if it was myself. He goes, yeah, Sam, definitely. We can have a chat. That's fine. But sometimes I do need that own space to just clear my mind and do all that. So I think I'm not too dependent on who I'm doing it with. Having a blend, I think, is important, because if I get to the point where I'm like, I can only do it with someone, then I would never do it by myself.
Yes.
But then if I was too much of a hermit, there would be so much fear around. Maybe the fear is holding me back where I'm like, I actually don't want to run with that person because what are they going to think of me and all this? So I think for me, what works best is having a blend. So I do appreciate our runs. It's awesome. And
Oh, dude, I'm telling you, mine's a little bit of a separate feeling where I get, it's in the things I'm not that great at, or maybe I just haven't participated as much.
Yeah.
I get anxious still of going for runs. I still get it. Like even today, I was like,
what is it? Where's the anxiety come from?
It sits with performance, like perform. As in, hey, if I'm going to go do whatever, 4 kilometers, 5 kilometers, whatever it may be, should I be doing it at 4-minute pace? Should I be doing it at 4:30 pace? Should I be doing it that enters my mind all the time.
Yeah.
Even with my normal training. And now I know exactly what I can and can't do. Yeah. I'll still have some mentality like, well, ambition, performance. I should be doing this. I should be almost top 1%. There shouldn't be.
It's the should, isn't it?
It's the should, which I think I'm getting about is there's shoulds, and then there's what I ought to do, and then what I know I can do to pass me through. So that modulates well. There's such in goals, because I want to make sure we don't miss this and finish off with that. So from a goals perspective, you talked about adventure being the big word for 2024 for yourself and your partner. How does goal setting look like for you? Tactically, let's look tactically specifically. How do you do it? Do you sit down? Do you write it somewhere? Do you document it somewhere? Do you review it every month, day, week, fortnight, whatever it may be? How would you look at so that at the beginning of 2024, towards the tail end of 2024, or whatever cadence it might look like for you?
Yeah.
What does that look like on a practical basis? How do you actually track things?
Yeah, I always bring it back down to the SMART goals, the SMART, simple, measurable, achievable, realistic, time bound. I think there's certain like achievable, attainable, whatever. Can I measure it? It needs to be measurable. Is it clear? Because if I have a goal of I want to be a better man, that's just out the window, right? It is wishy-washy. I can't measure that.
Yep.
But maybe being a better man and breaking it down. All right, maybe I want to be a better man in my relationship. Maybe it's about having one date night a fortnight. I don't know. So being as specific as possible is a big one for me. A goal, just say I've been working on my health. As I've gotten better, I'm big on starting really small so that I know I'll achieve it. Then I can work my way up, and it just turns into a crescendo where that big stretch goal, yes, it's going to stretch, but I know I'll get it. So I'll work my way around that.
Yep. We always underestimate what we can do in the micro. We always overestimate what we can do in the micro, and we underestimate what we can do in the macro. Yeah. That's always the case. And it's a good, I wanted to make sure I noted it when you said that about the building up to it. I often don't do that. I just go too heavy, too hard, too early, and not enough wins, because the real big benefit comes in the consistency that builds up, and then all of a sudden I do this with running. Right? I'll go run 5Ks, 7Ks, 10Ks, 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, injured, or I'm burnt out, or I don't want to do it anymore. Where realistically, if you'd started it, just do a K, 2Ks, 2Ks, 2.5Ks, 3Ks. 20 weeks later, you'll be doing 7Ks, 8Ks, and you'll be doing it okay. I've got to really, wanted to call that out for me more or less. I do that all the time. But sorry, continue.
No, same. I can relate to that because of the past, and I think it's the wisdom there of telling myself, if you do X and X is 50 times more than what you're usually doing, I'll potentially burn out, and I might not attempt that again because maybe the trauma I've gone through that, and the trauma is subjective for that.
Yep.
Big one I'm on is vision boards, because I'm a very visual person.
Okay.
So if I have a goal, maybe I'll attach like an image to it, and then I'll put a time to it. Like I've done it before.
Oh, okay. So you will put a time to it as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the T in SMART, like the time bound. Like what I've done previously, I have the goals in mind, and I've got the images that I need to print and all that. It's a board, usually 9 goals and 9 different categories in life, and I'll give it myself 6 months. Some of these goals I might knock off in 2 weeks. Some of them it will take me the 6 months to do. And I think when I have that and just working backwards, like what can I do today? Like one goal was to run a marathon. So the goal for the week, and I gave myself was, all right, by next Wednesday, sign up for the bloody thing.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a big
big
push.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've paid for it and I'm going to let myself down otherwise. There's been times in the last few years where I haven't felt really, I've probably been a lot lower than usual, like lower frequency, whatever that. Me, like what does showing up look like for myself? And really, and I'm sure you're great at this because you're quantifying almost every day of what that looks like. I was at a 1 out of 5, hypothetically. How do I just get to 1.2?
Yep.
So it might be getting up and just going for a walk, you know. So I'm in a pretty good place in life right now, so that if I do this, I know I'm going to tick these off. An area that I might not feel strong in might be finance. All right, a goal could be I want to save this much. Maybe I can go to like, let's just increase it by like, maybe I want to save a little bit more than I thought I would, that I know I'm going to get it. So I've got to be a little bit more strict with my spending and all that. So if I have it all there, I can always see it in the morning, but not take it for granted. It's like the whole I look at like sticky notes, right? If sticky notes are, after a while, I actually forget the sticky notes there.
Yep.
But if I'm conscious that this thing is in front of me and looking at it, it comes down to like, why am I doing this at the end of the day? And am I doing this so that a big one for me is the parent thing. So I can teach Oki about the goal setting thing and like how I do it. He might not resonate with the style I do, but he's like, Dad said he's going to do something. He's going to stick with it because he's integral with himself. Yep. And if he's not, going to meet that goal, is he going to renegotiate with himself to go, all right, this is too much of a stretch and I'm going to hit this. I'm going to bring it back. Instead of, let's say the finance, said I was going to save this much, maybe I'll save less. All right, that's the new goal. I think that's the big thing with setting a goal. If I don't hit that, that's where the shadow behavior will come into play. That's the stuff that I hide, deny, and repress about myself. I can beat myself up if I don't renegotiate with it, because I said I was going to run this, and just say a goal of mine is to run a marathon in a certain amount of time. If I know that's going to be a stretch and I don't hit that, I can beat myself up over it. So I think this is the realistic side of things, and there's own measure. And I know everyone has their own way of doing things, but what works best is, yes, if I write it, think about it, is it going to be a stretch? It might not be a stretch. That's okay if it isn't, because I'll make a stretch for the next one. And then having in a visual aspect, that always helps for me. So I can see it. All right, I'm on target. Do I go and measure? Maybe not to that extent. Actually, I'm not too much of the data side of things. I try and keep it like loose in regards, okay, I'm on track with this. I'm not on track. Do I need to renegotiate? I'd say the only thing I do track is, and I know we're on the same part of this, is actually like documenting like how babies went that day. Yes. And it's just for fun. So just so Oki's later on, I was like, what did I do? Like, how was I as a kid? I was like, well, tell me what day. I'll tell you exactly what you did. We can go and have a bit of a look.
Yeah, exactly. Let's finish off with this. Just thinking through, I want to ask people this particular question because I want to see what the answer is probably over the year. It's something that I've always been interested in, which is, if you had to, right now, where we are, it's the beginning of 2024, is there as you see the world in your own perspective, in your own view of the people that you interact with, if you had to talk to somebody, I mean, a model, like whatever it may be, is there a skill set, a trait, a characteristic, a word, something to focus on that you would say, you know what, in my own personal opinion, this is what I've seen from my own learnings in life, really focus on this, get this right, or have this characteristic, have this trait. That's going to be, at least from what you've seen, a valuable thing to just make sure you have in either great steed or great strength, for whatever reason that it may be. Is there one that comes to mind at all?
So if I heard you correctly, what is the one thing to focus on that I could encourage that could set them up, or could...
Or that you've seen has been really successful for you in achieving what it is that you wanted to achieve. I'll give you an example here. One of the things that I would call out, if it was me, right, I'd go, hey, this has really worked out in my life. It's discipline, right? Yeah. Discipline in the sense of across all the things, whether you're saying the discipline of getting somewhere on time, doing the things that you're saying you're doing. That for me is something that falls for you in terms of, hey, that trait or characteristic or skill set, hey, that's really been something that it's either helps you or just personally you're going to focus more in 2024 into.
Yeah, actually there's two. Can I
sure. Two? Yeah, expand it.
So the first one is, I feel integrity is a massive value that people might put under the rug. It's like, it's easy to show up for someone. Like if I were going to show up for a run today, but am I showing up for myself? That's the big one. Like if I say I'm going to do something, if I don't do it for myself, but I do it for someone else, all right, there's an element of people pleasing there. So integrity is essentially the agreements that I have with myself and other people. And do I hit that? Right. And we can get to the T, like I said I was going to be at this exact time or whatever, or I said I was going to eat this and I didn't. It's essentially, it's binary. It's like, did I do it or did I not do it? It's yes or no. The story can come into play for excuses, whatever, but it's like integrity is important. And this is where it comes to renegotiation. So, something that was long. I'm going to work out 3 times this week. In the next 7 days, I'm going to work out 3 times this week for 30 minutes. Okay, which is pretty specific and clear. If I know I'm not going to reach that third one because of sickness or because of life gets in the way, whatever, make that agreement to renegotiate. I'm only going to do 2 this week, but I will do 3 or 4 the following week. Like, and there could be a makeup, like you said, like I didn't feel that great, so I know I'm going to double it and I'm going to stick to it. Because that shows up, like, because the story I can tell myself is someone that says they can do something that doesn't. I might say they're not reliable or I don't trust them and all this, because that's so important for relationships too. If I'm really big on that with Bernie as well. Like I said I was going to do this so she trusts me.
Yep.
That's so big. And I think the more we can trust each other, then the more that like the world's a safer place too, because trust and safety come in hand. That's the big one. The other one is like seeing someone, like with therapists, men's work support group, whatever it is, so that we can understand our triggers and we can understand what makes us angry, why we're going to fear, in a sense that because that will make us better people too. Because if I can understand why I do this, then I'm not going to, hopefully I don't take it out on anyone, but then I know how to regulate myself when stuff like that happens. So
let's go with it first, actually, to regulate, because that's the biggest thing. It's sometimes you miss, you can know yourself as much as you know yourself, but you sometimes don't see the ways that you either come across or the
unconscious,
the things that you come across in everyday life that you actually need someone else to see it and inspect it and share it with you. And you need that trusted entity that you know is not coming at it from a harmful place, but a loving place of, hey, this is coming through. I don't know if you see it or not, but you might want to actually do something about that. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, and you need someone externally to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'll give an example. I used to freak out when definitely not now, but like if I didn't know something, here's an example. Bernie and I, before baby, we were talking about Pompeii, like the town in the city in Italy. I think a volcano ruined it. I didn't know what Pompeii was.
Right.
And she says, you don't know what Pompeii was? And it was almost like, at the time, I felt like as a hypersensitive person, I thought she was having a go at me, going, you idiot, like you don't know what the hell Pompeii was. And I got really upset about that. And then I was telling her that I remember growing up that, I don't know, I just didn't understand pop culture. It could have been that. When I didn't know something, people would laugh at me, like, how do you not know what that is? And and I felt stupid. And so the story I told myself is, you're an idiot, or you're stupid, you're not smart, you're not intelligent. And being told those things definitely feel,
of course,
anyone would feel low.
Yeah.
So I would not ask the questions because I would have a fear that if they go, how do you not know what that is? Of being inquisitive and curious. Yeah. So now, like I've mentioned before, like a value of mine has been curious, because it's okay to not know the things we don't know. Yeah. Even if people know a lot about that topic. So I wouldn't have known this if I didn't do work. I didn't do work myself through therapy or support groups. That's why I think it's a big thing, because there's the known knowns, the things we know. Yep. The known unknowns. Yep. And then the unknown unknowns. And I think the more we can feel comfortable in that fear, in that space of the unknown unknowns, that's where a lot of growth comes from. When I'm learning about something, especially something that's really transformative in my own personal development, and I get confused, that's where the growth happens, because now things are starting to conflict to the point where I start questioning, and then I get a little bit more inquisitive around it, even though if I'm like, man, this is really using a lot of energy. And then it'll start to click into place, and I look back and go, oh, okay, now when I was doing that way of living, that was definitely not the way I intended, and it's definitely not. But that would have never have happened if I didn't come across that space of knowing who I was too. Yeah. So that might sound like all over the place, but if I really hone it back in, it's when I can see someone about my stuff, and reducing the word stigma around seeing someone, and just being curious about who I am and like why I'm wired like this, then that will make me feel more secure about who I am despite the circumstance. Yeah.
Look, I'll wrap it up with this. I could get real deep into this one, but it's basically, I had a monthly goal for this particular month, and it was in the conversations that I'm having, not just on the podcast, broadly, be curious, because I have had a slightly opposite way to you, where I grew up, and for whatever reason, I can recall things really well. And and my dad can do this too. We were the people who were like, what do you mean you don't know? Like I know the most random, useless facts from all over. But you know when you play those games where it's like, hey, what did this happen? I almost answer all of them, and I just like smash everyone. I'm like, yeah, I know all of these things randomly. And I have to pull myself up sometimes, because I will do that to people. I will go, what do you mean you don't know Pompeii? What do you mean you don't know Mount Vesuvius? What do you mean you don't know the Richter scale? What do you mean you know what an F5 tornado is? Randomly, I don't know why I've got these stored knowledge. I just have it, and I have to pull myself back from making other people feel that way. Right. But also, when something comes up that I don't know, in the past, I don't sit in the curiosity. I sit in the, I must not let go of this identity that knows everything. So I'll go, okay, I know about it. Cool.
Yeah.
And I'll just play along until I figure it out, and then cool, I'll just go with it. As opposed to where now the Subats a monthly goal now is be curious in the conversation. In the conversation that I was having now, I want to go a step away from asking the questions. I've got some notes that I took before this of what I want to do, but I went, go down the path of know the person and what you want to be talking about, but then just lead with curiosity. AKA talk to the things that I'm curious about, because if I'm curious, I'll immortalize my be. And that's awesome. But a bigger part of my annual goal is move away from assumptions to understanding, because I get really down into just using my assumptions. I might know you, Tofe. I might know that you have a child, and I might know that, oh, hey, he probably does this. It can help somewhat. Obviously, we need context, but you also need to go down a more, I at least feel, more understanding. Cool, have that, but don't just assume things.
Yeah.
In the places where you shouldn't be assuming.
So how would you measure that? Would you say, make sure I ask? Yeah, how would you measure that?
There's been, so in the past with some of the monthly goals with the assumptions and the understanding, it has been in any places where I'm usually assuming things for an action, lead in with understanding, lead in with making sure you ask as opposed to assume. That can come as simple as, like little examples. Today, we got coffee just before we come to the podcast and after we did a run. I got what I assumed was a coffee that my partner needed. I didn't check on it. Now, part of that is I know her, and I know that that's probably what she likes. That doesn't have to be always the case, and it's a very minute thing, but the way you do anything is the way you do everything, and that's the way I was doing everything. I was assuming that, hey, my mum didn't want a coffee, cool, I'll just get it. I don't get it. Maybe someone's over and I just didn't get them. I just assumed there wouldn't be anyone else. So there's those little aspects that I go, yeah, it's moving away from assumptions to understanding, and that's why I guess it linked to curiosity, right? And in this conversation, it's the, hey, I think in being curious, and in curiosity always leads to that second point for you of, hey, connecting with people doesn't have to be the stigma around, hey, oh, you're seeing a therapist or you're seeing, no, it's being curious that that person will help you unlock the unknown unknowns, the bits that you don't know. And that's when I think you helpfully say kind of clashes the thoughts that you have consciously to the unconscious and to the ones that you don't even know about. The concept, the idea that you go, oh, damn, actually, that's why I do that. And that's where it goes. So we'll wrap it up here. Immortalize, thank you very much for joining us. And Tofe, thank you for joining for a bit of a conversation around it. Obviously, it's the second one. If you want to check out more of a more direct convos, we had that initial one. But I really enjoyed this. This is fun. This is the sort of stuff that, as I said, going to have a coffee. We have talked about these things. I'm like, you know what? These would be cool just to have a conversation, more structured, have a specific idea in mind. But it's the why I want to carry forward. Just as it's easy. It's just a conversation, right? And so appreciate obviously making the time for it as well.
Thanks, mate. No, this was awesome. It was such a great conversation. And it was just like, yeah, I loved it just as much as you did.